Now, a documentary has revealed how a top, and I mean top, Hollywood actress visited East Yorkshire back in 1958 without being spotted. This is a fantastic story. Now, we're talking about Jayne Mansfield, huge, huge star. She starred in films like The Girl Can't Help It and Too Hot to Handle, of course. She was appearing at a West Yorkshire club. She decided to do a trip to Bridlington for the afternoon. She also stopped over in Hull, you can't believe this, to use the powder room at the Royal Hotel. I was in the Royal Hotel the other day. Well, Neil Shawn is responsible for the documentary. Talk to Neil in just a moment. First of all, let's remember Jayne Mansfield. Here she is speaking to an interviewer, Robert Robinson, in 1960.
Do you find it at all disagreeable to find yourself, and quite often your family, on more or less constant view?
Actually, I feel that a star owes it to her public to bring the public into her life. The fans feel that they kind of own you, and if you kept your life a complete secret, it wouldn't be fair to them. But my private life, and when I say private life, I mean private life, is always very private.
You're presented as a symbol of sex appeal. Now, I wonder if you care to define that phrase, sex appeal.
Sex appeal is a wonderful, warm, womanly, healthy feeling. If you're a woman, it's womanly. If you're not, it's manly.
Does it come from inside, Miss Mansfield?
It comes only from inside. It is nothing that's manufactured. It has nothing to do with measurements or lipstick color. To me, it's cleanliness and youth and an effervescent desire to enjoy life. That's what sex appeal is to me. It's sort of the vibrancy that you find present in a young kitten.
And lastly, a question about your career. If I'm rightly informed, when you first went to Hollywood, you went there to try for the role of Joan of Arc. Now, does this mean that you're particularly interested in the classical roles?
No, I didn't try for the part of Joan of Arc. I had been to 3 different universities and 2 or 3 private dramatic schools before I went to Hollywood, preparing myself for my hoped career as an actress, my hopeful career as an actress. I did a soliloquy from Joan of Arc for Milton Lewis, who was the head of casting at Paramount Studios, in order to audition, and he just seemed to think that I was wasting my, as he said, obvious talents, and he lightened my hair and tightened my dresses, and this is the result.
What a classic interview. That's Robert Robinson talking to Jayne Mansfield, huge, huge star in 1960. As I say, this new one has been put together by Neil Shawn. He's joining us on the programme now. Neil, good afternoon to you. That a classic interview, wasn't it, that?
I think me and you should do interviews like that from now on.
Yeah.
I mean, the beauty about that as well is, you talk about today and intrusion and stuff and what goes on in celebrity world, but, their questions were very direct and, could have gone either way answer-wise, couldn't they? So I think you missed that from the whole sort of Hollywood system, as it were, yeah.
Doesn't really sound like a conversation, though, does it? It just sounds like 20 questions. No, listen, there's many people who just won't remember or won't know who Jayne Mansfield is. Just give us an idea of just how big a star she actually was.
Well, Jayne herself was a huge star, really, thanks to that enviable sort of figure, a bit of an icon for ladies of the late 50s and throughout the 60s. She was always compared, really, as a rival to Marilyn Monroe, but she was totally different in a lot of respects, because while Marilyn was a victim, if you like, of the studio system, Jayne was very clever, very beautiful, had an IQ of 163, married Mae West, a muscle man, after she met him at a Las Vegas show, then, created, give you an example, she went to Las Vegas in 58 and earned, in our money today, the equivalent of £35,000 per week. That's how big a star she was. She turned on the Blackpool lights. She even opened the Chiswick flyover. There was nothing this girl would do.
Did she open the Chiswick flyover?
She would do anything, She was like the Kim Kardashian, I think, of the 50s. And I often say this, but once we made this documentary, what I find fascinating is today she would have been a brand. It would have been perfume, Dole, reality show. Do you know what I mean? Things like that. It would have been a lot more together. But in those days, people weren't sold as brands.
She was billed as the sexiest woman on the planet at the time, wasn't she?
Well, I think, it makes you laugh because a couple of weeks ago we had Toulouse from N-Dubs being billed. I mean, you're kind of looking at you, what? I think women of that generation, for me, and I think if you ask even women of today's generation, I think there are always very beautiful women in the world. I think the people that I've recently interviewed, dare I say, are people like, say, Jennifer Lopez strikes me as an absolute natural beauty, as much, if you like, as Sophia Loren would have been in that period. So they're always there, but I think the media now take a cheap option and obviously wonder what pictures they don't need to pay for to put them in the press.
And Too Hot to Handle, would that be her biggest thing?
Well, no. I tell you what was interesting was when we started to make the documentary, we kind of wondered why she'd come on this northern tour. And basically, my father, who was a comedian, Alan Scott, he knew Max Wall, who was, get this, Peter, who was her support act. So can you imagine Max Wall with the tights and the bald head and the wig?
Max Wall was her support?
Yeah. I mean, we know who these guys, but you're sitting there thinking, and I said to Dad, well, what did he do? And he said, well, he's act. And then I said, what? And Jayne Mansfield came on after that. So it was an interesting sort of dichotomy, if you like.
Both had sticky out bottoms, though, didn't they?
What happened was she literally went to many different areas. She went over to Blackpool, Greasborough, Stockton-on-Tees, and some of the clubs, dare I say, were less than savoury. They were working men's clubs. So from somebody who'd been at the height of Las Vegas, fanfare and the Hollywood system, to be down doing no disrespect, but a working men's club must have been a bit of a tough call. Really.
Yes, I was going to say, I mean, is this a bit sort of Norma Desmond? I mean, did she come to this country because she was struggling? And I mean, when I mentioned Batley Variety Club, I mean, did she go to Batley Variety Club to perform?
Oh, yes, she was there for the full week. And what happened was, she'd originally arrived in England, in Manchester, at the airport, and was managed at the time by Sharon Osbourne's father, Don Arden. She'd fallen out with him. And so the producers, or the bookers at Batley Variety, decided that they would step in and give her some work.
You can't believe that Jayne Mansfield played Batley Variety Club.
Yeah, and this is the great bit. There's this fantastic piece in the documentary, you'll love this, where during the week, Diana Dawes, our very own platinum sex bomb, turns up to witness this spectacle. Yeah. And basically, Jayne had no idea who she was, but the manager who's on the documentary said, so I took her round, and I opened the door, and I popped her in. He said, oh, it were 8 Frosty. And you kind of think, don't you, I think it might be Frosty.
Yeah, it might just have been a bit frosty. Oh, that's a classic. So she insisted on going on a trip to Bridlington. I mean, why? I mean, you just can't make this up, can you?
Well, no, you see, what she did was, she was very, very, as I say, very astute, very clever lady, and what she kind of was always doing was looking for work. So when she was in Batley and the surrounding areas for the week, she went every afternoon. She was staying in Wakefield at the time, and so she'd go out, like to a market at Halifax, Dewsbury, Bradford, and then they said to her, the coast. Now, she said to this guy, oh, our coast is hours away. How far? I said, oh, it's only an hour. So that's how they ended up going to Hornsey and to Bridlington. And so consequently, she used to wear this brown wig, and she had a couple of children with her, and, they obviously went on the beach and stuff like that. But we know this as fact, not only because of the guy telling us this, but she came back to the club and had sticks of Brid Rock, which you wouldn't do now.
Oh, you're joking.
And gave it out to the audience and things.
So did she travel then with a brown wig so that she could go to these places and not be recognised?
I think so. I think a lot of the time, yeah. I mean, when she wanted to be Jayne, she just would take the wig off and morph into she was a character, that's what she did. She was just a character. So when she decided to do that, yeah, and when she turned up at the club, but a lot of the time she just turned around and went shopping in, I mean, the weirdest thing, she turned up at this fete in Brighouse, right? And we've got this picture of this international sex bomb in this fete in Brighouse. What's funny about this, on a serious note, is that, you wouldn't be able to do this now. It'd be like you going, say, Peter, to Angelina Jolie and saying, now, I'm opening something, in Hornsey, and could you pop along for me? And getting her to agree. There was no press people around her. She was literally her and a manager. And she said, oh, yeah, I'll tot around. So she turned up at this fete in Brighouse. There's some pictures of her there. There's only about 14 people. And you kind of think, wonder what she thought when she got So funny, really. Very funny.
You cannot believe that, can you? I mean, this is unbelievable. And this story about her going to the Royal Hotel in Hull. Now, did she just pop in to powder her nose? Is that...
Well, she had obviously some children with her who, as anybody who's a parent knows, children always want to go at the wrong time. And so she went in there and she thought she'd been spotted, and so she was kind of like aware of it, even though she'd got the brown wig on. But yeah, she'd gone in there, freshen up. I think they had a drink in the bar and nobody had spotted them at all. But what you have to remember is, in today's age, somebody would get them straight away on their phone and video and get it on YouTube within minutes. In that period, you'd have to summon a photographer from the whole Daily Mail, say, get them to come and do the picture, and then, it took a lot longer, to do things. And I think, people did know she'd been in the vicinity, but I don't think anybody was quick enough to get her. I mean, she spoke about going, to Brid in her act to Batley, because she thought that would be a good talking point, really.
So really, she had the day trip to Brid. She popped into Hull on the way back to appearing at Batley.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't. You see, the show didn't start till 11.
Oh no, it was very late at night, wasn't it?
Yeah, so she'd nothing really to do. And what was interesting was she'd sort of, as I say, she was staying at a place near Wakefield, and so she would get the driver, who was her husband also, and we know for a fact that she went, for instance, to Dewsbury Market and bought some bedding. You kind of like, why would you do that? But he said that she was very much, she knew the power on a more serious note, she knew the power of PR, and she knew that if she tottered up, say, to Harry Ramsden's, which she did also at Guiseley for fish and chips, that she could create enough publicity to fill the club. And with them paying her £20,000, she had to fill the club. There was no two ways about it. So she knew, like, by popping up and them saying, oh, there's Jayne Mansfield, there's Jayne Mansfield. So then people talked about it. But as I say, today would be a lot faster, because, say, coming on your show, people would hear of her. Amazingly, Peter, nobody in TV thought to interview her locally. There's no cameras or anything like that.
Unbelievable.
Footage. It's very strange. But it's even though I dare to say myself, it's a beautiful documentary of a time that people will remember with great affection. Yeah. I think that if you were there or you thought about it or whatever, I think you'll really, resonate with you of the period that it's about. It's just, you kind of wish you could almost step back in it, really.
There's a good chance that somebody listening in Bridlington today sold her the rock on that day. That's the funniest thing. How can people see this documentary?
Well, it's available, obviously, right now. If you want to get it, it's called From Hollywood to Yorkshire, Jayne Mansfield, and you can get it through Amazon and all other leading good sites.
Fantastic story. Great to have you on the programme, Neil.
A pleasure.
I wish you well.
Thank you.
Take care.
Contact Peter Levy. Call Grimsby 340 959 or Hull 225 959.